So we're now going to create a mini application that will allow us to output the contents of a text field when we type within it. So we're looking now at text fields, and although this doesn't have too much use, what it does do is it allows some sort of user interaction, and then we can grab values. What we're also going to be looking at in this video is creating a little short method that allows us to get an element from the page without having to do document.getElementById each time we want to do so. So we're also starting to delve into shorthand functions as well. So what we're now going to do is we're going to demonstrate this, which is basically just the ability to start typing anything you want, and in this case I'm just going to type Alex, and what that's doing is it's mimicking what I'm typing. You can see that this span element here, this output, is mimicking everything that I'm typing into this box. So we're going to create this very small application. This is just going to give you a good idea of how you can start to introduce input fields into your code as well, and actually start to grab the value from them as well, because it's very slightly different than grabbing values from elements on the page using the inner text property. So let's go ahead and just start writing the code from this. It's not very long, so we'll have this done in hopefully 5 minutes. Okay then, so over to our text editor. What we'll do first is we'll start building up the markup just to see how we want this to look on the page, and then we'll go ahead and start applying the JavaScript to this, and we'll do it all in the correct way. We'll create an app global namespace so we're not creating variables all over the place. So let's go ahead and create the input field. So this is just an input with a type of text, and we're going to give this an ID. In this video we are going to be using getElementById, the method from the document object, so we'll just be using IDs, but you can change this to work with query selectors as well if you wanted to. So I'm going to call this entry, and I'm going to create a span just here which will sit just next to the input field nicely, and I'm going to call this output. So let's take a look at what this looks like on the page. Let's give it a refresh. Okay, so we've got the input here and the span. Let's go ahead and just enter some content in here. So for example, start typing, and let's head over to refresh. Cool, so now we can actually type something in this field, and we want the text to mimic here. So let's take a quick minute to explain about the sort of process we need to go through to get this to work properly. The first thing we need to do is attach an event handler to this input field, which will then on key up, so when the user hits the key down and then their key comes up, that text will be in here. So what we can then do is then grab that value and replace whatever's in here with the current value of this field. So it's actually fairly straightforward, but bringing things like this together can create effective applications when you start to build something that's actually useful. So let's go ahead and create our app object. What we'll then do is we'll go ahead and create a method that allows us to get a shorter way to get elements. So we'll say a shorter way to get elements. So this is going to be app.getElement, and that's going to be a method. And we want to be able to pass in the name of the element that we want to select. We're not going to really do any checks around this. There's no real need. All we're going to do is we're going to return document.getElementById element, and that's it. So what that's now going to do is it's going to return that element. So we can practice this within here. So app.getElement. And let's choose, for example, the entry field. Now that's returned this, which is the input field, and we can start doing things with that. So if, for example, we wanted to say var, or app.entry equals app.getElement, and then entry, entry. Then we can do things like app.entry, something, so we could do .onClick or something like that. So what we'll now do is actually go ahead and write this code in here. So we want to say app.entry equals app.getElement, and that's getting the element that we want, which is entry, so this one here. and we want to duplicate this as well to deal with the output as well, because we need to be able to access the output in order to actually output things. So this will just say get elements required. So now that we've done that, we can actually start to create our event handler. So we're going to go and create event handler. So from this we can directly access app.entry, which is the text field, so app.entry, and we can go ahead and set an event handler here, and this is going to be on key up. Now I'm just using this DOM method, but you can go ahead and use any method you want. Well, one of two methods, correct methods to actually set the event handler here, but I'm just going to do this, create a closure here, and then inside I'm going to go ahead and just console log something out just to make sure this is working. So worked. And what this is going to do is when I start typing something in here, it's going to output worked. So you can see that on key up and on key down, you can see, on key up, you can see that we're getting this worked output. It's been output 19 times in total so far. So now what we want to do is we want to say app.output equals, app.output.inner text. Now remember, that's the output, the span, the inner text is this part here. So we're changing that to something. We're going to use this to refer to this, which means app.entry. So this is referring to app.entry. So it's this dot. Now we can't use inner text, and we'll have a look at why that is. If we go ahead and refresh and type ALEX, nothing's happening. This span should be filling up with text from the app.entry, which is the input, but we don't have an inner text property on this input field. Instead it's dot value. Because it's an input field, it contains a value, not inner text or inner HTML. So now when we go ahead and start typing, that's reflecting the value of the field, and we can test this by saying app.entry.value, and that will return us the current value. So if I was to type something else in here and we do that again, that gives us the full value back. So we're basically taking the value, plonking it in the span, and we're done. We've created a small dynamic application that allows us to mimic what we're typing into an input field. And you can't, this is pretty useless because you wouldn't ordinarily just output something users typing. You might do, but from using this, you could, for example, create some dynamic functionality to search as a user's typing, anything like this. So this is the fundamentals of building something that lets you create dynamic applications using event handlers.